Imagine for one moment that you are seated in a small amphitheater with an enormous movie screen before you. You are front and center, and there are strangers all around you. All at once, the energy of their feelings flashes on the screen. Frustration, anger, deceit, sadness, tension, and unease. You are no longer an observer of these emotions. You are absorbing each and every one, and you know exactly who they are coming from. But most of all, there is a dark, inescapable energy that has pulled you in, and you want nothing more than to go outside where you can breathe again. Oh, my friends, the exciting exploits of an exhausted empath. Just in case you happen to have missed my recent community wall post, I was telling you guys about an experience I had this week when I did a psychic sit-in at the courtroom in Massachusetts for the Karen Reed trial. I was directed to do so by my spirit guides who wanted me to become fully immersed, at least for a little while, in real time with this trial. I am now fully aware of why I had been avoiding it. It was just unreal. The explosion of energies that I absorbed just threw me. It has taken me probably right up until this morning to feel a little bit like myself again. And that's probably my own fault. I don't think I did enough protection work before and after the fact, after having conducted that psychic sit-in. This isn't something that I do a lot, guys, because it is definitely very taxing for me. So today in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly what I learned, what I heard, what I gleaned, what information, knowledge, feelings, and messages I received during those 2 hours that I was watching, listening, and absorbing everything that was going on in the courtroom on the particular morning that Trooper Proctor was being cross-examined by Alan Jackson of the defense team. Of all mornings, right guys? Yes, of all mornings, it was a doozy. So I'm going to present this to you while I do a tarot reading that will hopefully just jive really well with the messages that I received. We'll see how it goes, and I don't want to keep you too long. Of course, if you haven't as of yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment right now and go ahead and do so. I'd love to have you join. And if you have already joined us, thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. All right, so without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and get things started right now. Okay, friends, I'll be doing something a little different for this reading. I'm going to pull maybe 9 to 12 cards, and I'm going to see how those cards correlate to the different energies that I read in that courtroom, the different people's energies, and the messages I was receiving, most of which I have written down, and I'm going to relay them through the cards as I tell you what they are, read them off to you. I decided to work with the Dark Forest Tarot deck because the thing that impressed me, one of the things that impressed me the most, is that the energy in that courtroom is exceptionally dark. I have to say most courtrooms do have a very heavy energy to them, but this one is really very dark, very dark. All right, so without further ado, set the box aside and I'll clear the deck. I'm gonna go ahead and shuffle and get some cards to come out and see how they relate to the different people whose energy came forward for me. And hopefully we'll get through this quickly. We'll speed it up, as always. Okay, friends, so I had 11 cards come out, and I think this ought to do it. If not, I'll pull some more if necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and turn them over. I have a feeling we have some reversals going on here as well, which I will read. I don't ordinarily read reversals, but in this case, I'll go ahead and do so because if they did come out that way, it was for a reason, all right? So let's start turning over and see. Okay, guys, so I can already tell you that the energy of these cards as a whole, with the reversals, with the appearance of the Tower, the Death card, the Fool in reverse, the Ten of Wands, the battle here with the Five of Wands, the deception here with the Seven of Swords. We have a lot of that dark energy showing up. And the first impression, as I mentioned, was the dark energy just immediately came seeping through. So I want to begin by first just talking about the immediate sense of frustration that I felt. It was definitely overwhelming to me, like a culmination of frustration in that courtroom coming from various sources. I believe everyone in that room on that morning was frustrated in one way, shape, or form. Very, very frustrated with what was going on that morning. And again, this was on the morning, the 2 hours in the morning that Trooper Proctor was being cross-examined by Alan Jackson. And again, that sense of weariness and this sense of extreme tension that was like palpable. So let me begin by talking about Prosecutor Lally, because his energy was like so easy for me to tap into. And I would say that this is most akin to the messages I was getting from his energy field. The Ten of Wands. He is feeling done, you guys. He is feeling done. I wrote down, Prosecutor Lally is so incredibly overwhelmed by the defense's line of questioning because he knows it is not making his case look good at all. It's not making him look good at all. He feels this burden so much, and the weight of this is like, he's like bending in half from the weight of having to carry a case that is just absurd. And there is some part of himself I was getting that is well aware of the absurdity of some of the things that he has had to put forth as quote unquote evidence. He's aware of it, and he's trying to hang on. Like, he's hanging on to this case right now for dear life, because he's like, I signed up, or whatever, I was assigned to this case, and if need be, I'm going to have to die on this hill. But you guys, I mean, he is so burdened by this. And I'm not saying this to elicit any sort of sympathy necessarily for the prosecution team, but it's an uphill battle that he has been climbing. And that is the immediate energy I read around Lally. He knows he's on an uphill battle, and he's shouldering the largest part of the burden here. And during the time that Trooper Proctor was being cross-examined, Lally's energy was like super tight. He was like clenched. Everything inside of him was like, oh my gosh, like he just saw this thing going sideways quickly and horribly. And he was feeling as if there were nothing he could do to stop it. It was like a runaway train. Those are the words I heard with respect to Lally at that moment in time during those hours of Trooper Proctor being cross-examined. Okay, conversely, the defense team, Alan Jackson, David Yannetti, I forgot the female attorney's name, and I apologize. I'll put it across the screen. But their team is like ripe and ready to roll, and they're in it. They're in it to win it, okay? They know that they're fighting a battle here, but they truly feel as though they are going to go the distance. So I did feel some form of, again, frustration. That was the overwhelming theme. So I wrote down that the frustration from the defense team mainly comes from the parsing of replies from the witnesses and the judge's actions. We'll talk about Beverly in a moment or two. And also that on occasion, they've been made to feel as if they are fighting with one hand tied behind their backs. Now, that said, they are still feeling as though they have got this. They've got it nailed down. It is still what they perceive to be an active battle, so to speak, because they are still in the prosecution's case in chief. When it comes time for them to show what they have to offer, this energy might change. This energy might change, okay? But that is what's coming up around the defense team for me. And again, those are my notes. All right, guys, I want to talk about the judge, Judge Beverly. Canoni, we'll call her Judge Bev. I read her energy loud and clear. And I'm feeling as though the Three of Pentacles with this one individual here sort of standing up above these other two, which would represent the two sides here. And they're like seeking her counsel. She is like the leader. She's directing what's going on. The first messages I heard about her was that she has bias blindness. She has bias blindness. And yes, guys, I know I asked you for your opinions, whether you thought that the judge was displaying her bias toward or against the defense team, like she was leaning towards the prosecution in many ways, because again, I hadn't been watching firsthand and I wanted to know what your impressions were. Well, when I was psychically seated in that courtroom, oh my goodness, the bias is real. The bias is real. Okay, I did pick up from her that day that she wasn't really digging Proctor too much. Like she wasn't feeling him at all. She was a little bit almost disgruntled with the fact that he sent such horrible or wrote such horrible messages. I felt from her, let me refer to my notes for just a sec, guys. Yeah, the judge. She's trying to lean into the Commonwealth's case. She has bias blindness. Okay, so her frustration that morning was around the content of testimony as coming from Trooper Proctor. She was feeling like, this just doesn't look good. This just doesn't look good. And she very much wants the Commonwealth's case to look better than it's looking right now. And so her frustration was about the things that Trooper Proctor was saying, was having to admit to having texted, and she wasn't happy with that. So she was like annoyed with Trooper Proctor, and just in general, she's like thinking to herself, why did you do this? And she most certainly, without a doubt, at least on the morning that I was there, okay, I'll put that out there as a disclaimer, on the morning that I psychically sat in that courtroom, the judge was 100% in the wheelhouse of the Commonwealth. Like she was putting her energy and efforts into their case far more than she was into the defense's case. How does she feel about Karen Reed? She has very, very little regard for Karen Reed at all. She doesn't feel sorry for her. She feels as though like whatever's going on, somehow, some way, she has some culpability in. She was really feeling like tense. She was irritated by Trooper Proctor. She kept telling him to speak up. And I think you could even hear it in her voice. She was like, she wasn't having it. She wasn't having it. So that was the energy. But she has bias blindness. It's like if she is showing any favoritism toward the prosecution side, she doesn't care. She doesn't care, guys. So that's what I got for Judge Bev. Let's for a moment move into Karen Reed's energy that morning. And I'm feeling that these three cards here, the Sun, the Tower, and the Eight of Swords, is really picking up what I felt coming from Karen. So the Sun generally talks about, feeling good and the warmth of its rays, flowers blooming and just ready to roll, right? So I think there was a little bit of optimism in Karen that morning because she knew that Trooper Proctor was coming up against Alan Jackson and that he wasn't, like he was taking the gloves off. Alan Jackson was prepared to make Trooper Proctor not only face all the things he has said and done, but admit them. And there was something about that that gave her a little bit of satisfaction, so to speak. But she also is very clearly feeling the tower moment, things coming down around her, especially having to sit through and listen to the content of those messages. Like any good feeling that she had about what was up and coming, what was going to be happening with Trooper Proctor that day, it was swiftly broken down for her, because it really did just wear down her spirit to hear those things being said. And the same feeling I picked up from her family members. And here, of course, with the Eight of Swords is Karen's energy. She is bound. She is feeling so bound by all of this, guys. There's also a lot of physical ailments happening for her that she isn't able to really express or talk about. But I know that she does have health issues, and they have been plaguing her, as well as all of this mental anguish that she's been going through. Okay, so Karen Reed that day was just like, she was hoping to feel light and bright, but even though Proctor was in the hot seat, it wasn't like such a moment of glory for Karen as much as she had hoped it would be. She was really still feeling the weight of everything that was breaking down. And again, that feeling of just being bound up by this whole thing. She's blind right now to where things are going. She wants to believe that the defense is putting forward plenty of reasonable doubt, but all in all, like, she's just going through a lot of mental anguish. And that morning, she was feeling it. She was definitely feeling it. Next notes I took were with reference to the O'Keefe and the Reed families. Okay, and the Fool in reverse here is what I'm picking up for them, because this is a journey that neither family wants to take. This is that energy for them. And allow me to read directly from my notebook regarding the O'Keefe family and their opinion, because a lot of you guys have asked me whether or not they're starting to wonder whether they should have continued faith in the Commonwealth's case and in that narrative, okay? But I wrote down the O'Keefe family, the energy I got from them is that they are wavering. They are wavering due to new/more information being revealed as time goes on. They are frustrated that they're being forced, so to speak, out of their original mindset, and that comes up really strongly around Mrs. O'Keefe, okay? So there's a lot of tension in her, because I almost feel as though she could be at odds with other family members, her husband, or other people in the O'Keefe family that might be quietly saying to her, like, are we sure that we don't want to consider any other circumstance, as opposed to, believing that it was Karen Reed who did this? And the reason I do feel as though she has been steadfast in wanting to impart blame strictly on Karen is just simply that of like a mother's heart. As a mother myself and as a grandmother, we want to look very protectively over our children, and we see those around them as being the ones who should guard them, as opposed to leading them into any sort of troubling circumstance. And I feel as though Mrs. O'Keefe, John's mother, feels as if Karen somehow, some way, got him into whatever it was that happened that evening. So even if in her heart of hearts she isn't exactly certain as to whether Karen struck John with her car, she's still holding her accountable, because she feels as though, because Karen was John's significant other, she should have been the one to protect him, because she was more or less taking the place, so to speak, of that role that Mrs. O'Keefe once had when her child was younger. It's complicated. It's a very complex dynamic, but I think that's sort of what is keeping Mrs. O'Keefe stuck, more or less, where she is. Other family members are wavering. I'm feeling that they're wavering. Now, for the Reed family, they are, again, I'm going to keep repeating the word frustrated, because that was just intense. So they are frustrated that the Commonwealth's witnesses are lying, what they feel obviously lying. They feel as though there was a rush to judgment against their daughter and or family member, and they are extremely upset that they have to sift through demeaning testimony regarding their loved one, meaning Karen Reed. So that is the energy I picked up from the Reed family. Okay, so again, neither family is on a journey that they want to be on. So that's why this Fool is upside down with reference to the family members. Okay, now let's talk about the darkest energy in that courtroom that morning, and that belonged to none other than Mr. Deceit himself, Trooper Proctor. There are 3 cards that I feel are connected to Proctor here, okay? But the words I wrote down that came up immediately for me in his energy: procedural impropriety, gaslighting, and deception. Those were the words I wrote down. Now, I also wrote down sidestepping, which is interesting to me because I see a little sidestep, little fancy footwork here going on for Trooper Proctor. He was sidestepping, definitely sidestepping. But you might wonder, like the 10 of Pentacles, you know, this ordinarily indicates like a successful completion, money, incoming wealth, building up of something that was successful, so to speak. Because Trooper Proctor is the lead investigator in this case. And from the messages I heard when he was talking to his buddies and so forth, he was like, no worries, guys. I've got this. I'm building this all up. I've got this under control. In his mind, what he wasn't saying was, there's no way this is going to go in any other direction than the one I'm going to build and create. So he built this deception. So you see how these cards came up next to one another? So we've got this whole build up here, right? Where this is going to be like, we've got this in the bag, guys. No worries. Like, it's a slam dunk. I believe one of the direct quotes he used was regarding Karen was she's F-U-C-K-E-D. Okay? Because I don't want to say the actual word in case children are within earshot. She's screwed, in essence. And he built that on deception. Look how close these cards are, right? On deception. But way up here, we've got the King of Pentacles, which again would relate to, which I'm picking up as related to Trooper Proctor's energy. And it is in reverse because the king, the mighty, mighty King Proctor, is falling. He has fallen, you guys. He has fallen. He is no longer seated on that mighty throne that he perceived himself to be. Judge, jury, law enforcement, the whole 9 yards. Like he had himself seated in that position this way, but this is the reality. It's upside down now for him. It's way upside down now for him. Okay, and does he know it? He knows it on some level, guys, but there is a bit of, I want to say, arrogance to his energy that I was feeling. A lot of arrogance where even though he sees this reality happening, even though he sees that there's trouble on the horizon for him, and I'm going to tie that into this card as well as this being John's energy, of course, John being the person who is gone, unfortunately, no longer with us, the death card. But there's also a death here for Trooper Proctor. This is not a physical death. This is a figurative death. Trooper Proctor is in trouble. He's in trouble, guys. So those were the messages I got around Proctor, the energy around him, extreme deceit. He thought he had this whole thing like a puzzle. He was constructing this puzzle. He didn't need to do any other investigating. He didn't need to follow these proper steps. Remember, procedural impropriety were the first 2 words that came to mind when I got deceit around Trooper Proctor. So he wasn't afraid to like make things appear one way. He wasn't worried about going from this position to this position. He wasn't worried about it then. He is now, though, because this is the death of his standing perhaps the loss of his financial future. He knows right now that, or some part of him knows, because he still, I feel like, is unwilling to admit to himself how really, really bad he looks. But his whole perception of himself, I think he's still being like pumped up by his friends and family members, and they're still like supporting him. How and why, I've got no idea. But he doesn't see it yet. However, there's some part of him that needs to be prepared because the kingdom is falling. Guys, I do want to pull one more card, which will be representative of the jurors, because I did read their energy collectively, and that one popped right out. So that's the one that wants to be read. But I did get a clear message from the juror members. Okay. Yeah. So we've got the Six of Cups here, guys. It's an interesting card for me because that typically talks about nostalgia, an easier time, trying to see things from a simpler vantage point. And I do think that 6 or more jurors are trying very hard to still remain open-minded because they have been instructed carefully to do so. However, it's been a struggle. It has been a struggle for them. They are doing their best to listen to the Commonwealth's case and not see through it. However, a good portion of them, and it might be 6, are like, all right, let's get on with the show here. They are feeling frustrated. They are feeling as if the prosecution is just belaboring points that don't mean anything. They are picking up on cues of deception. They were very, very much disturbed by Proctor's text messages, by his demeanor. They were not jiving with him. And I found this to be interesting to me too. I wrote, the jury at that moment, that morning, was also not connecting with the judge or disconnecting from her. Now, again, that was the energy of the time that I was in the room. But I felt like overall, and that doesn't speak for everyone, but the overall energy I read from the jury members was that they were somewhat irritated by Judge Bev that day. They were more than like disdainful toward Proctor. I didn't feel any of the jury members having an ounce of regard in a positive way toward Proctor that morning. And 1 or more jury members has already convinced themselves that they do not believe Karen Read is guilty. So I know that this has been a long video, and I don't want to make it any longer by now switching gears and going into your burning questions. I'm going to try to come back on Sunday, do that reading and upload it for you on that day, at the very latest Monday, because I do have a few more questions that you have sent in that I want to address, but I don't want to make these videos super long. They take me a while to edit and clean up for you and to get them uploaded. So I'm going to leave this one here, and hopefully the messages I received today are ones that will register, that you'll have some thoughts about. Please feel free, as always, to drop a comment down below. Let me know what resonated most for you with regard to this psychic experience that I had. And it was, I'll say this, guys, it took me at least 36 hours to work beyond the feelings that lingered for me. I probably didn't close out of it the right way from a psychic standpoint, and I was like, oh my gosh, the energy, it just exhausted me. I kept needing to go outside. I kept needing to get air. I kept needing to just feel grounded again. And I now know why I have avoided doing a psychic sitting in that courtroom, because it is like, wow, it's big stuff, guys. It's big stuff. But if you enjoyed this reading, please consider giving this video a thumbs up And if you haven't as of yet subscribed to the channel, I hope you'll take a moment now and do so. In my next reading, I'll probably go on up to my reading space. It's super early today and I'm doing some work up there, so I kind of just wanted to hang out here with you, but I'll probably go on up there and change venues for you, give you a different view, and I hope to find you guys here when I return. I appreciate each and every one of you guys so very much. Thank you. Don't forget, we have a contest to give away that'll be happening when I hit 2,500 subscribers. I did I believe a video short on that, so be sure to check that out, and have a wonderful day. As always, be blessed.